Welcome to our weekly program, The Inside Story of Chabad in America through the Mindel archives. A few weeks ago, we spoke about a talk that the Rebbe gave to teachers, mechanchim, mechanches, chinuch, and we spoke about, the Rebbe spoke there about the living, to be a living example, the mechanchim, parents, and about Kabbalah Soil, the yoke. We should have, we should accept authority. Also about the calf, that about the Rebbe in time of the Rebbe Rashab. And this week I mentioned that I will continue the talk from the Rebbe, a few things here. So this week I want to continue, and this was in the early years. Now another thing I want to say, in another place, the Rebbe spoke to other group of the students, and the students, I just wanted one question. They asked a question to the Rebbe: can everyone elevate himself to have Ruach HaKodesh? They asked the Rebbe questions about Ruach HaKodesh. Can every Yid have Ruach HaKodesh? Okay. So first, let me speak about the talk of the Chinuch, and then we'll go to that answer, which is a very interesting story. I'll bring out here. So, number one was last week. We spoke about Avias Kanemer, the last time. Now the Rebbe said to the Mechanchim, when you teach children the Aleph Beis, you should teach Aleph Beis, then the Nekudas, Komets, Patach, Tzeir, Segel. And when you read, you shouldn't read O, Bo, Vo. You should say Komets Aleph Fo, Komets Beis Bo, Komets Gimel Go. And as the Frierdiker Rebbe mentioned in another place, that when you teach a child that way, you're giving him Yerushalayim for life. And that's how we should teach children Komets Aleph Fo, Komets Beis Bo. Another thing the Rebbe mentioned to them, not to use reading books and material of secular authors, only from frum authors, not secular. Another thing that Rebbe said then, constantly speak to students on the greatness of the Eibishter, Gadlus Hashem, also of the creation of the Eibishter, and the uniqueness of men. The purpose the Eibishter created men. Another thing that Rebbe told him then, the books of science and other subjects in the English department, do not tear out or erase pages from these books. There's some pages there that maybe are not 100% al pi Torah. So we shouldn't erase those pages. Why? As this will arouse the curiosity of the Yetzer Hara to delve into it. Because if it's torn, what are they going to do? They're going to go and they're going to find out why was it torn, and it's going to be a whole maisa. So don't leave the pages there. The Rebbe was careful. Then the Rebbe writes here that those days the Torah Messiah is working on producing such books. I don't know. Next, one should emphasize more the beauty of Yiddishkeit and the pleasantness of a mitzvah, rather than disparage the physical world. Better to do good than to refrain from bad. In other words, there's sur merah and there's asay toiv. Do good, go away from bad. That's the difference between Chassidus and Musar. Chassidus stresses the goodness, the beauty of a neshama, the beauty of a yid, the tayakat of everybody. The Musar stresses the sur merah, go away, because if you do this aveira, you'll go to Gehenim. If you'll do this, you'll be punished, which is good. Chassidus also speaks about it, but Chassidus emphasizes more the asay toiv, not the sur merah. When you have a room, a dark room, if it's dark, you put in a little match, little light that can lighten up the whole room. Put a little light, the darkness will go away. There's a difference between Musar and Hasidus. It's now another thing. In a girls' school, it's better to hire a girl rather than a man to teach the girls. Now we might think because of tznius. Here the Rebbe says something very interesting. Her Shomayim is stronger and her influence is more evident on the student. Her Shomayim, her teaching, her Shomayim, it will have more an effect on a student. Now, it says in the Rebbe says in one of the sichas, I think, a person should never be satisfied in Yiddishkeit. For example, a person that learns all day and he comes home at night, sometimes he doesn't pick, the children don't see the father learning. Sometimes. Don't see why. Because he's satisfied. He learned all day, and so he doesn't, and the children don't see it so much. Sometimes that's why you see many times children from good homes, and they grow up not the way they should be. They don't see their father learning many times. Because they're satisfied. A Baal Isek, a person that goes to business, he feels lacking. He's working all day, so he feels he has to learn. So he's not satisfied. He comes home, he has to take a sefer. He has to learn. He's not satisfied. So sometimes you can see it more on a Baal Isek. A man comes home, Shabbos, from shul. He's in shul. He had an aliyah, for example. He had a kiddush. He davened. He's satisfied. He comes home to his wife. His wife is busy with the child. His wife is busy with diapering a child. And this is her job. This is how she should be. She doesn't have to go to shul. But she's lacking, she's not satisfied. She's looking always for more. She's not satisfied, even though that's her job. But she's not satisfied. Mitzvah says Shazman Grome, women are part don't have to do. But nevertheless, they have an earning, they want to do it. So in they always have this kind of Yerushalayim. You say by Chane, the son Shmuel, and she didn't go to Eile Regel. Eile Regel is a holy thing. Why? She said, El Hadar Hazei Spalolti. I davened for the child. Even though Eile Regel is a very big thing, but she davened for the child. But she felt she should go. She wasn't satisfied. So that's why I believe that her way of teaching girls, a woman, her Yiras Shamayim is a little different. Another thing that Rebbe says, in learning Tanakh, Chumash, you should never skip the topic of Yehuda and Tamar and David and Bathsheba. You should always teach at the foundation of the Chazal. Always teach the way the Chazal taught us. Never skip that. Now, on the same thing, I would also say, I remember I taught Hebrew school Talmud Torah in the evening, in the afternoon, public school children, and I taught them the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was on the box on the water, and the daughter of Parei, Patya, took stretched out her hand, and she took the box, and it says that Mefarshim say that her hands got long. I taught him also about Yaakov went to Choron and the stones started to argue. The tzaddik should put his head on me, and the Eibishter made the stones one. Okay. Parents complained. What kind of speech is that? How can it be? But you can't skip that. You have to learn. You have to teach that to the children. And there is pshat, remesh, drus, soid. I explained to the parents. They understood, but that has to be explained. You can't skip anything. If certain things that doesn't make sense, it doesn't mean that you have to skip it. Now I want to go back to this question, and I want to tell you a story. Can anyone or everyone elevate herself to have Ruach HaKodesh? So the Rebbe answered, yes. Every Jew has the potential, but it requires special preparations in learning, and mainly by limiting one's desires and temptations. Only then can he or she rise to that standard. But every Jew, being he or she, has the potential of having Ruach HaKodesh. At least the feeling. A person who is careful, his preparation is careful in temptation. He or she, they have at least the feeling of some like a Ruach HaKodesh. Here I want to tell you a story. Rabbi Mindel's mother-in-law, Mrs. Nemtsov, she's buried near Rebbetzin Khan, if you go and see. She lived 115 years. And when she passed away, Rabbi Mindel asked the Rebbe, what should they write in the Matzeva? So the Rebbe said, you should write not more than 110. Because Yosef HaTzadik lived 110, whatever. But she really lived 115. She's buried there, you can see, when you go, Rabbi Zechana Nemtsov, Sheina Nemtsov. She lived in Long Beach. Erev Pesach, after my chasana, Rabbi Mindel and Mrs. Mindel went away for Pesach. So I drove her to Borough Park, to her nephew. They lived in Borough Park, and they were Litvish people, very choshev people, very frum people. And she stayed there for Pesach. Now, the table, when I came home, this was Erev Pesach in the afternoon, the whole long table was full of, food, fish and matzah and maror, everything was ready for the Seder. I put her, Mrs. Nemtsov, I put her at that table, and she looks and looks and looks from far, very far, the end of the table, and she says, Miriam, her granddaughter, Miriam, what is this? She points, what is this? Miriam says, Baba, this is Pesach dike fish that we bought in the store. Kosher Pesach. Fine. 10 minutes later, she calls over Miriam. Miriam, what is this? Miriam says, Baba, I told you, this is Pesach dike fish. Fine. Went through another 10 minutes, and I was standing in the back and I saw that. So Miriam, she says, what is this? Miriam took the fish, she went over to her, and she says, I want to show it to you. Showed it. Not for Passover use. How can she see such a thing? I couldn't even see it. But she had a feeling. She was a holy woman. She was Satilim all the time. She was mamish. So we can see here that a person can reach that level of a feeling of not Ruach HaKodesh, but at least of the right thing. So this is the lesson when the Rebbe says that we should open our eyes. So that means that if we really are roy, we can open our eyes and see the emes the way the Rebbe wants. The Rebbe wanted us to see. And the Mitzvah Hashem next week we'll continue our weekly program.